Hi guys, it's Patricia here. I want to talk about this amicus curiae brief that was filed by a forensic expert panel for Daniel Holtzclaw's case in the Criminal Court of Appeals. These wonderful people have wrote this great brief, and it's Peter Gill, Jane Goodman, Della Hunte, Susanna Ryan, and Moses Shanfield, George Shiro, and Brent Turvey. I hope I haven't messed up any of their names. Basically, in a nutshell, folks, this is some serious reading here. It's actually a 62-page brief that can be found online, of course. In a nutshell, they're basically stating in here of how the prosecuting attorney in the case actually committed prosecutorial misconduct. He misrepresented the DA evidence there. And in here, they're basically stating that, how they minimally, to present the DNA evidence, basically in a nutshell, all they ended up doing was stretching the truth, basically, on the DNA evidence. They didn't have the proper stuff to even really back up what they were stating. The prosecutor said that he was, that basically, you know, he did commit the crime and it came from vaginal fluids and all this other stuff, but actually it did not. It ended up being skin cell DNA. And not only that, there was a question about, there was other two male entities that showed up on the DNA, but they didn't even address that, and they said none of that belonged to Mr. Holtzclaw himself, which, I'm sorry, but if you're being convicted of this crime, how can your own DNA not show up in the forensic testing? It just doesn't compute to me. And not only that, through this brief, I mean, these experts were really wonderful about addressing a lot of things on here. And I basically just want you guys to really, I'll put the description, I'll try to load the link into the description box below. But I want people to really take a look at this brief, because it's some of the things that they actually said in this brief, and this was stuff that they took out of the actual physical trial to convict this gentleman here. They took all these answers, you know, all these things from there, and then they addressed each section of it. So basically, everything, the reason why Daniel Holtzclaw was actually convicted was because of this DNA, because they said it came from vaginal fluid, but in actual reality, it didn't. So that's a big problem. Big problem, folks, when a prosecuting attorney misrepresents something like that. But my biggest thing that after reading the entire brief that kind of threw my mind was, they said that Mr. Holtzclaw had raped and orally sodomized each person through their unzipped buckled pants. I was like, okay, so how can someone rape and orally sodomize someone through their unzipped buckled pants? I mean, I've asked myself for over 24 hours and I still don't have the answer. I'm like, where is it going with this here? And how can this actual prosecuting attorney actually state it this way into being presented in the court case, and then nobody can test it? Okay, I don't see how you can rape or orally sodomize anyone through unzipped pants. It just doesn't make sense to me, and it's not computing. I basically just wanted to put this out here because this was such an awesome brief. It really did cover a lot of things, and basically in a nutshell, folks, this man is not guilty of anything. You can basically go through this brief and you're going to be able to see that all the stuff that they actually went through and spoke about in this court case was just, it was just basic slander all through the whole case. There was no there was no actual physical evidence of any kind, and these forensic expert panels, they actually put it in this brief and they break it down for you, and they actually tell you what's going on and what they found from their personal perspective, and why this man actually needs to go into, they need to actually give this man a new trial, is what they feel, because not only did the prosecutor actually commit a crime, but he also denied this individual from having due process and everything else. You know, he has rights, and all that was violated because he didn't get the proper attention that he should have gotten. And then because his own personal defense lawyer, I'm not sure what the big clincher was there, either he actually interpret the actual DNA forensic lab results, either he couldn't interpret himself. They gave him a copy of that during the trial, which I kind of think that's not fair. I mean, they hand it to him in the middle of trial, and he's supposed to try to figure out what's happening in the actual DNA information. They didn't break it down for him or anything else. So there's been a lot of clinchers on the DNA because it's just been crazy, and nobody actually told the defense anything on how to really, you know. So now they're fighting this DNA because it's totally not correct, folks. It did not come from the vaginal fluids as he had stated. It actually did not happen that way, and that's the most sickening part, okay? So, and it's proven that most of these people here in Oklahoma City, it seems that they can just go around, anybody can go out and say, you did this and you did that, and it looks like Oklahoma City is going to go, okay, yeah, okay, and they're going to use their officers to help get this individual convicted. So it's a big problem in there, and it really should be addressed. And this amicus brief basically breaks it down in a nutshell until it starts telling how each witness that actually came forward and everything is broken down by witnesses and what these actual witnesses have stated. They don't actually put the name in there. They're referred to them as either C1, C2, or whatever, because they're trying to protect the witness, because they can't actually use that person's name into the amicus brief. So they're referred to as C1 or C2. But each one is broken down as to what the actual complaint was and why these things were actually happening and what that person actually stated. And I just want to read you one of the statements of the facts. It said that Mr. Holtzclaw was an Oklahoma City Police Department officer. On June 17th, around 7 p.m., Mr. Holtzclaw stopped a 17-year-old complainant, referred to as C1, along with two of her friends, a woman and a man, who were having an argument by the road. And this was in the trial transcript. This was taken from the actual trial transcript. And then it said, Mr. Holtzclaw questioned each individual, placing the male in the back seat of his patrol car. Mr. Holtzclaw ran their names for warrants and found that Miss C1 had a warrant for trespassing. Okay, so that's one of the witnesses against this man. She had a warrant, and it was for trespassing. So he searched her purse for drugs before releasing all three individuals. He ended up releasing them. Around 9:30 p.m. on that same evening of June 17th, Mr. Holtzclaw then saw the teenager, which was C1, walking by herself, and gave her a ride to her mother's home. This is the kicker. While on the mud porch, Mr. Holtzclaw was alleged to have patch-searched this female, placing his hands on her skin, under her shirt and bra. That's what this person had allegedly stated that he had did against her, before allegedly inserting his finger into her personal areas and then supposedly raping her, and said it occurred for about 10 minutes through the unzipped fly of his buckled uniform pants. Okay. I'm like, at all, because every time anything's going on, it's all referring back to this through unzipped fly of his buckled uniform pants. So it's crazy here. And then afterwards, about 11:45, Mr. Holtzclaw then allegedly raped a second woman, Miss C10, for 20 to 30 minutes, and supposedly orally sodomized her through the unzipped fly of his buckled pants. Okay? Miss C10's allegations led to an acquittal. Finally, after the end of the shift at 2 a.m. on June 18th, Mr. Holtzclaw stopped a vehicle driven by a third woman, which was Miss C2. And she said she was allegedly orally sodomized by Mr. Holtzclaw through the unzipped fly of his buckled uniform pants. A few hours later, on the morning of June 18th, C2 reported to police that an officer had forcibly orally sodomized her after stopping her vehicle. A sexual assault nurse, or SANE exam, as they refer to, was done, and it occurred within several hours of the alleged sexual assault. On the afternoon of June 18th, 2 OCPD sex crime detectives, one female and one other male, interrogated Mr. Holtzclaw for approximately 2 hours, handing him pins to fill out his own forms. Okay. What I find kind of odd in that is they're two police detectives, and they think this guy's a criminal, which is one of their own, so they hand him a pen to proceed to fill out the forms that they're supposed to fill out. But he has to fill out his own forms. He's a criminal, but he has to fill out his own forms. At the end of the interrogation, the male detective inserted his bare hand in an evidence bag into which Mr. Holtzclaw then placed both his dark navy blue uniform pants and black Velcro belt in the keepers. Okay? And the whole point of it is that actual detective had zero gloves when handling any of this stuff. He opened the evidence bag up. He just slid his hand right in there and all that stuff in there, and they thought that was, that's not the proper handling of DNA, of course. You're not supposed to do that. Everything's supposed to be separately bagged and sealed, so there's no cross-contamination. You're supposed to wear gloves and all that stuff. So it's become a big problem that they also found when they ran. First, they did 2 sets of what they call a DNA profile. They actually did 17Q1 and then 17Q2. And those were the first 2 that were actually taking to try to convict him on it. Okay. And then they turned around a year later and took another what they call the same swab. They did another swab test after a year, and then they have 17Q3 and 17Q4. Okay, well, all they basically did, folks, was they just took if you can just imagine that you have Q-tips for your ears, it's like a giant Q-tip, and they basically dipped the Q-tip in just water, and then they take it across the front of the pants, and that's exactly how they got their little sample. And that's all they got. Okay? They didn't do no other type of testing. And this amicus brief actually is very, very extensive on what they should have done and what they didn't do. And it explains everything that you can imagine in here, and I think it's just a wonderful thing to actually try to understand. So if anybody can get online and actually check this amicus brief out, it is very in-depth on how it's broken down. And I just wanted to bring that to you guys and kind of make you understand that some of this stuff, if it's happening to this fella, it could happen to anybody, really, because it's just, it was just nothing. This man was basically convicted on nothing, and they didn't have anything. There's no physical evidence tying Mr. Holtzclaw to any of these women at all. There's no evidence at all. Okay, we've Because all through it all, they've been saying that they've got this and they've got that, but they really don't have anything. And this man was sentenced to 263 years for absolutely nothing. And I just want you guys to maybe explore, get yourselves online, actually find out about this amicus curiae brief that was put out by this forensic expert panel, and actually take the time to read it. Because most of the time, I laughed. Okay, for one, I can't believe that the actual prosecuting attorney was actually allowed to physically write crap like that. And then two, he misrepresented everything that was laying before him. So not only did he lie about what he had, he also, his lies continued on to the jury, which made it so that he couldn't get, Mr. Holtzclaw could not get a fair trial. So today, if you guys ever get any extra time today, maybe you can go ahead and check out that amicus brief. And I will put it down in the description box for you guys to actually physically check it out. But it's got a lot of stuff in there and what the personal opinions is. But basically, in a nutshell, this brief, these experts basically say this man needs a new trial, you know, all this stuff. If they can write down 62 pages of stuff, folks, that's a big problem, okay? No expert panel is going to go 62 pages unless there's so much stuff in there that's all wrong that they have to address, okay? They're not going to do that, and they're not going to go out of their way. So, Oklahoma City, you are doing bad stuff again. You were caught 10 years ago, and you're doing it again. So you need to wake up, because people there are not going to put up with that kind of stuff. So appreciate you guys letting me come on and actually share this with you. If you get time today, try to check out that amicus curiae brief. Appreciate it, guys. You guys have a wonderful